Through all realms of social media regarding MMA, Jon Jones vs. Tom Aspinall is the fight that's been trending as if it happened yesterday. Yet such discourse is almost completely focused on the question of, is Jon Jones actually ducking Tom Aspinall in a fight? So today I've decided to thoroughly research this question through an outsider's perspective to give an insightful answer as to if Jon really doesn't want the smoke. With UFC 309 being just around a week ago, Jon's initial reason as to why he never wanted to fight Aspinall simply doesn't work anymore, and that was, well, he wasn't fighting Tom because Jones vs. Miocic was already booked prior to Aspinall winning the interim championship and getting his slot as the #1 contender. However, with Jon Jones claiming to be the baddest man on the planet and ignoring the #1 contenders rather
"Hello John, I have nothing against you personally"
polite call out after he just became one of the first people ever in UFC history to defend an interim championship, things began to look suspicious, seeing as just 2 months following that, Jones would put out a statement asking his fandom whether they would rather see him fight Alex Pereira or Tom Aspinall. Where then later, in Jones wanting the Pereira fight more, Aspinall seems to fade from this possibility as Jones then begins to kind of push all of his focus onto wanting the Pereira fight after fighting Stipe Miocic in what he would call a super fight, seeing as Jon Jones believes that Aspinall has simply been too much of an a-hole and he doesn't really want to do business with a guy like that, which is odd because Jones is infamous for his relentless personal attacks used on DC during their rivalry, with him also trying to blow the beef out of proportion with Stipe due to a random clip of Stipe in his living room a long time ago. Something DC pointed out where he asked if Jones was merely doing this as a means to engage himself in something more personal and meaningful. So, is Tom Aspinall being too mean actually very consistent for Jones to say? No. Regardless, Jones even took it as far as implying that if he were to not fight Pereira, then the UFC doesn't get one final shot out of who Dana White considers the greatest of all time. Dana White, despite always supporting Jones, has made numerous comments of not only the winner of UFC 309 having to face Tom, but also that if Jon ever wants to fight again after that, it will be against Tom Aspinall, the next in line, deserving of a title shot, and yes, I did say deserving, something Jon Jones certainly won't agree with of all things, considering he has implied before that Aspinall is a nobody, and his second fight versus Curtis Blades wasn't for the real championship. He needs to beat more champions. But here's where Aspinall found a problem. If Jon believes that he needs to beat more champions, well, the current champion of whom he would traditionally be next in line to face has refused to step in the cage with him for Aspinall to get that chance, even though Jones was on the opposite side of the coin for years, such as against Shogun Rua, who gave Jones the opportunity to become the youngest champion of all time because Jones was widely considered the #1 contender in the light heavyweight division at that time. As former UFC light heavyweight and heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier remarks, quote, Shogun had to fight Jon Jones back in the day, Rampage had to fight Jon Jones back in the day. Those guys were big names that fought him as the young guy that was the champion who made a name off of all those legends. Then he says, quote, and for Jon to say that he's a nobody, but is he really? He's the world champ. Honestly, that's who he is. He is the #2 heavyweight in the world. He's the interim champ. He's not just a guy that's working his way through the division. This is a guy that smashed the division. Look, Jon Jones isn't afraid of Tom Aspinall. I wish people would stop saying that. I think he's trying to be more strategic. End quote. And with that, Tom Aspinall as the #1 contender has not only won the interim championship and defended it, becoming one of the few people to ever defend an interim belt, but Aspinall has also finished 5 of the top 10 pound-for-pound heavyweights in the first round. So Aspinall is certainly worthy of fighting Jones for the championship, but Jones' own inconsistent reasonings and favor from Dana has kept this fight back, something that former champion Michael Bisping has noted is aggravating to the point where Jones should be utterly stripped of the heavyweight title, as he likely would if this were boxing per se. When pressed directly upon this by a fan who pushed back on Jones' "he doesn't deserve it" comment, making note that when comparing Jones prior to his first title shot in Aspinall, Aspinall has more wins, more stoppages, more wins against ranked opponents, more main events, and has the interim title, where Jones then responds by respectfully taking back his remark. But even now, with Dana opening up the idea in the post-fight conference that Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall would certainly be the biggest heavyweight fight ever, and probably the biggest fight the UFC has ever done, after Joe Rogan was quick to ask Jon Jones if he would retire or fight Tom Aspinall following UFC 309. where Jon characteristically omitted Tom Aspinall's name, but did mention that he would talk to Dana and Hunter, and if things go well, he might give the fans what they want to see. Jones is probably referring to what he called FU money, so that he would have so much financial compensation, win or lose, it really wouldn't matter. The exact number where this lays has been kind of speculated and rumored to be something comparable to the recent Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight, which came out to $40 million and $20 million respectively, which averages out to $30 million, which it would be something that Deontay Wilder would usually make. And although I've never seen this clip, I have heard rumors that Jones has wanted something comparable to Wilder's pay for a super fight, which has never been something the UFC has ever done. Not with Conor McGregor, not with Khabib Nurmagomedov, Brock Lesnar, Islam Makhachev, nobody. So, does Jones even have enough leverage to pull this off? Well, maybe. Jon Jones is widely considered as the greatest of all time. Jones seems to be in a relatively good shape, but is getting old and has maybe only one fight left, although he doesn't have to take it, meaning that Jon does at least have the option to offer one more fight at the proper price, or he simply retires and lets the UFC lose what Dana White considers the biggest fight they've ever done, and their GOAT. Lastly, I want to point to my actual conclusion, as it's not that, while it could be considered as ducking, I completely agree with DC. Jon Jones isn't scared of Tom Aspinall. He's simply trying to be strategic. Since Aspinall has finished so many heavyweights and has barely even touched the third round, Jon Jones really doesn't have a chance to even study Aspinall and his tendencies, so it's basically a blind fight that's really dangerous. Does this mean that Jon Jones should continue to avoid trying to fight him? Most certainly not, and the fight needs to happen. On Tom Aspinall's YouTube channel, we would then come to find out that Aspinall was in long discussions with both Dana and Hunter over whether this fight would likely happen, where he implied that it most likely will. But what did you guys think? Do you guys think that the UFC trying to avoid Jon Jones fighting Aspinall is something to keep him as the GOAT? Something MMA Guru, who's another YouTuber, has highlighted that maybe they don't want Jones to lose, because then it'd look bad, because the PFL has Francis Ngannou, who's also arguably the baddest man on the planet. But anyway, was Jon Jones really scared of Tom Aspinall and him potentially facing his true first, real defeat of his career? Or do you think for whatever reason that Jon was merely trying to push relevance back towards the Stipe Miocic fight? Either way, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. And while I almost always make Naruto content and will continue to do so, let me know if you guys would be interested in more spaced out MMA content, as it could be a possibility, but I wouldn't expect too much of a change. But anyway, beyond that, be sure to subscribe. God bless you all. Love you guys.